Together the three of us hauled the unconscious Mr. Wharton into his cell while Brutal helped Dean to his feet and held him as gently as any mother while Dean bent over and hacked air back into his lungs. Our new problem child didn't wake up for almost 3 hours, but when he did, he showed absolutely no ill effects from Brutal's savage hit. He came to the way he moved, fast. At one moment he was lying on his bunk, dead to the world. At the next he was standing at the bars, he was silent as a cat, and staring out at me as I sat at the duty desk, writing a report on the incident. When I finally sensed someone looking at me and glanced up, there he was, his grin displaying a set of blackening, dying teeth with several gaps among them already. It gave me a jump to see him there like that. I tried not to show it, but I think he knew. "Hey, flunky," he said. "Next time it'll be you. And I won't miss." "Hello, Wharton," I said, as evenly as I could. Under the circumstances, I guess I can skip the speech and the welcome wagon, don't you think? His grin faltered just a little. It wasn't the sort of response he had expected, and probably wasn't the one I would have given under other circumstances. But something had happened while Wharton was unconscious. It is, I suppose, one of the major things I have trudged through all these pages to tell you about. Now let's just see if you believe it. 3. Except for shouting once at Delacroix, Percy kept his mouth shut once the excitement was over. This was probably the result of shock rather than any effort at tact. Percy Wetmore knew as much about tact as I do about the native tribes of darkest Africa, in my opinion, but it was a damned good thing, just the same. If he'd started in whining about how Brutal had pushed him into the wall or wondering why no one had told him that nasty men like Wild Billy Wharton sometimes turned up on E Block, I think we would have killed him. Then we could have toured the Green Mile in a whole new way. That's sort of a funny idea, when you consider it. I missed my chance to make like James Cagney in White Heat. Anyway, when we were sure that Dean was going to keep breathing and that he wasn't going to pass out on the spot, Harry and Brutal escorted him over to the infirmary. Delacroix, who had been absolutely silent during the scuffle, he had been in prison lots of times, that one, and knew when it was prudent to keep his yap shut and when it was relatively safe to open it again, began bawling loudly down the corridor as Harry and Brutal helped Dean out. Delacroix wanted to know what had happened. You would have thought his constitutional rights had been violated. Shut up, you little queer. Percy yelled back, so furious that the veins stood out on the sides of his neck. I put a hand on his arm and felt it quivering beneath his shirt. Some of this was residual fright, of course. Every now and then I had to remind myself that part of Percy's problem was that he was only 21, not much older than Wharton, but I think most of it was rage. He hated Delacroix. I don't know just why, but he did. Go see if Warden Moores is still here, I told Percy. If he is, give him a complete verbal report on what happened. Tell him he'll have my written report on his desk tomorrow, if I can manage it. Percy swelled visibly at this responsibility. For a horrible moment or two, I actually thought he might salute. Yes, sir. I will. Begin by telling him that the situation in E Block is normal. It's not a story, and the warden won't appreciate you dragging it out to heighten the suspense. I won't. Okay. Off you go. He started for the door, then turned back. The one thing you could count on with him was contrariness. I desperately wanted him gone. My groin was on fire, and now he didn't seem to want to go. Are you all right, Paul? He asked. Running a fever, maybe? Got a touch of the grip? 'Cause there's sweat all over your face. I might have a touch of something, but mostly I'm fine, I said. Go on, Percy, tell the warden. He nodded and left. Thank Christ for small favors. As soon as the door was closed, I lunged into my office. Leaving the duty desk unmanned was against regulations, but I was beyond caring about that. It was bad, like it had been that morning. I managed to get into the little toilet cubicle behind the desk and to get my business out of my pants before the urine started to gush, but it was a near thing. I had to put a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream as I began to flow, and grabbed blindly for the lip of the washstand with the other. It wasn't like my house, where I could fall to my knees and piss a puddle beside the woodpile. If I went to my knees here, the urine would go all over the floor. I managed to keep my feet and not to scream, but it was a close thing on both counts.